recording, I have to make sure. And everything is on do not disturb mode, so you won't see notifications pop up on that.
Excellent. My phone's on air.
All right, great. We have coffee. We're here at my kitchen table, and I'm with Lynn-Wood Fields. She is from Whitefish. She's an award-winning producer and director and editor. We shared passions. She's been actively involved in Montana's film scene until recently when she kind of put everything on hold to become president of the Montana Media Coalition. Why would you do such a thing? And welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Because it was needed. We're kind of sounding the alarm is probably the best way to put it. We've had a great 5 years, so great that we are out of tax incentive for the state of Montana, which is dear to my heart because I raised my family here, you raise your family here, and 1,300 other filmmakers do that. And I'm concerned if somebody isn't loud, like the coalition, people may not realize that film could go away.
Okay. And we'll get into all that. We'll definitely talk about some nuts and bolts. But we're both basking in the afterglow of a great event at the Yellowstone Film Ranch. Tell me about what we accomplished there.
Magic. I think that's what an awesome event. And I just have to do a huge shout out because there was Michelle and Richie Gray, Tina K and Tina B, as we call them, put on an incredible event at the Yellowstone Film Ranch and with Carter too. And
the Dream Team in
Livingston. It was, I had high expectations. It way went beyond that. It was so fun. There was about 100 people there. It sold out. What I heard is everybody that they asked for a silent auction gave. So it was a community event. We did a live auction, and we finally raised our minimum goal to engage for the first time ever Montana filmmakers with a lobbyist and legislative push.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what is the membership up to for the Montana Media Coalition?
We're at 150.
Nice.
Yes,
That's
our
great.
goal is 300 Montana filmmakers, businesses, and supporters. So anyone can join who kind of wants to believe in this. And
the link will be in the show notes, folks.
Great. And, really the reason is legislators often feel like, who's leading this? And for the first time ever, it's Montana filmmakers. And so I'm really proud of that.
That's great. Outstanding. It was a fun day. Even as a Montana filmmaker myself, I had still not been to the Yellowstone Film Ranch.
Same.
The famed Yellowstone Film Ranch is out by Chico, and it is just this backlot. It's a Wild West town, basically. It's really neat.
Yeah,
and,
I got pictures in jail, and then on top of that, the talent, Stephanie Quayle and Tim Montana, that was so incredible.
Yeah.
And the whole audience was singing, and we just had a blast, didn't we?
It was a good old time.
Yeah.
And there may be other events, future events there. We'll see. Who knows? We got a couple coming up in Missoula and Whitefish that we'll talk about and preview at the end of this. But I do want to ask you some questions.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions from skeptical people about what we're doing, what our community is about, and what kind of situation we're in now. So I'm going to kind of ask you questions from their standpoint.
Great.
As we get into this. What difference does it make to have a tax incentive?
I mean, all the difference, absolutely all the difference. So I always like to tell the story. I grew up in Montana. In the 90s, we had a ton of film production happening here because it's beautiful. We're super hard workers. It all went away because Canada started the first incentives. So then a lot of times we'd see Montana films being filmed in Canada, New Mexico, California, everywhere but here. And
I remember that's when Vancouver sort of took off and became a production hub.
Yeah, so they basically said, hey, we want this economic impact, so let's do this. Let's give them a little back if they spend a lot here. So then, of course, given the option between Montana and Canada, not that different in looks, they moved everything there. So we lost all of that film work. So we did have one in 2016. It sunsetted. It was very low. It wasn't that competitive. Meanwhile, after the Canada thing, everybody in the United States, there was over 40 other states that have incentives now. And we didn't have one. It sunsetted. In 2018, I got asked to join a committee. It was a few people. We wrote what's known as the MEDIA Act, Montana Economic Development Industry Advancement Act. I just call it the MEDIA Act.
Media Act. It's a lot tighter.
It really, though, is written as an economic and workforce bill. It was passed in 2019. It incentivizes hiring crew at 25% and local vendors at 25%. So you kind of piece together your production. It's written more as a refund than an incentive. You never pay the production come here. They pay us, and then we take a percentage. And it was so successful. We did not expect the success. It's at $12 million cap. I think we're at estimated $60 million. So we're out of tax incentives till 2029 and it sunsets in 2029. So we've built this incredible industry with over $332 million in spend the last year and a half, 1,300 jobs.
Based on?
The film office does an economic third-party report that's required to be given to the legislators.
Okay. And that's after this program, which cost, you said?
$12 million. And I'll say the Department of Revenue did a study, and there's a real misunderstanding that we're giving money. Like if we're saying we want 12 million, we're giving out 12 million from our budget. That's not the case. It's $1 out, 1.84 in, which means we're actually adding money to the Treasury.
It's a pretty good exchange rate.
Yeah.
The state spends enough money, though, I think, as a skeptic. Why should we be putting taxpayer money into filmmakers' pockets?
Just like I said, it doesn't cost them anything. Like it's
not what's happening.
No, okay. No. It's a refund. So what I like to say is it's like the equivalent of $1. So production gives the state of Montana $1. It spends it all on this stuff. And we say, okay, we get that you spent the money on crew and local vendors. We'll keep 75 cents, but you get 25 cents back. And then you have to sell it to somebody who pays state income tax at maybe 15 cents. In the end, we get that economic impact, but because of all the spend they have, we actually put more money into the Treasury. This doesn't cost the state anything, but it will cost us over 1,300 filmmaker jobs if we don't get this up.
But because it's an unlevel playing field, because so many other states
100%.
have tax incentive programs.
You know, you were saying I've taken a break. I have kind of taken a break. I'm an executive producer on 2 projects, one of which really should be done in Montana. Montana itself is like a character. The land is character in this book. And I've already been told by some of the people on my team, we really should be looking at Canada. It's just not worth it to go to Montana when other states, Canada, Oklahoma, honestly, Texas just went from 40 million to 200, maybe $250 million. They're looking at raising it to $1 billion. Just the other day, California's coming out at 750 million.
I saw that.
Basically, what they're saying is
California.
we want this. We want this economic.
Hollywood is having to do this to compete with the states that are offering the very lucrative tax incentives, partially because of what they've lost to Georgia.
That's right. And you know, when I think about it, people say to me like, "Oh, having to do this." I think it's just kind of genius. It really what it does is drop in a bunch of economic money into our state, creates jobs, but doesn't cost us anything.
Right. I think everybody sees the writing on the wall, which is you spend a little bit of money and you get a lot in return, but you can't compete by just sitting still and not.
Right.
Having skin in the game.
Well, what that makes me think about is if you're a small business owner and somebody says, hey, you should build a website. So you have to put up a couple thousand to do that. But then you might get returns of 50,000, 10,000 because people finally see where you're at. It's kind of no different. It's just a marketing.
Yeah. Okay. Getting back into character now. Doesn't most of this money that we're talking about, though, go to out-of-state people who come here, make their movies, and then leave?
Okay, great question. First of all, there was 167 other productions in the state of Montana in the last year and a half. I get kind of like frustrated with the narrative that there's only one production. That is not the case. In fact, I'm actually a huge fan of like the indie productions. I believe when we wrote this bill, the intent wasn't to have it just go to like one studio. And so in 2025, we're going back as filmmakers and saying we'd really like to reserve this for more Montanans. And so that looks like sideboards, which sideboards are basically protections in the bill. We're still working on the Media Act, but we're adding a few protection sideboards, which would be 60% reserved for Montana production. So when people say that to me, I don't necessarily disagree. I actually kind of agree. Like, I don't want this to go to one production. I have never wanted that. I think most of us Montana filmmakers know that it needs to be dispersed. Like Yellowstone Film Ranch in Livingston, Browning, Great Falls, the Highline, they all need that opportunity too, so that we can all work.
The sideboards kind of keep the Paramounts of the world from coming in and taking up all the incentives.
Yeah, so what we are doing for the sideboards is 10% reserved for what's known as SAG Ultra Budget, which is like under $3 million, which 100% hires Montana crew. So we want to make sure that's reserved. And a lot of times those are local Montana productions because there's a sense that Montanans aren't doing this. I'm doing 2 productions. I'm sure you have something.
Multiples.
Yeah, Jerry Rafter, who's in Bozeman, has a whole slate. Yellowstone Film Ranch has done over, what they said, 14 features. So there's a ton of us doing this work, and we want to make sure to reserve that. We're also doing 25% reserved for actual productions, that are LLC'd in the state, and then 25% for a studio, because right now we cannot really sustain all year because of our weather. It'd be great to have full-time jobs. 40% is an open fund. I'm not against these big productions that do the amount of economic impact. I just feel like we need to make sure it's preserved for everybody.
That's good. But, Lynn-Wood, Montanans don't know how to make movies, okay? How are they even getting trained?
Oh, good question. This character is very intense, Joe.
I take my position seriously, all right?
Well, I think there's one thing that is, I think, really heartwarming is filmmakers are really willing to mentor. That is like one of the things that I love so much about them. And so when that passed in 2019, I did see that productions were having a hard time connecting to crew, and crew was having a hard time connecting to productions. And so there's the Montana Film Office has a database. And then I also did a private sector training called Media Training Center. And our big goal is to do rapid training, get people film set ready. And right now we started with production assistant. We also have introduction to stagehands because they're kind of the nice mix. Our goal is to build out way more and to do mentorship for everything like camera op, hair and makeup, all of those kind of things. So we're building that out.
PA gets you in the door. Okay. I started as a production assistant.
Yeah.
You learn the whole business as a PA because your job touches every department. And it really gives you a nice broad overview in terms of what everybody does.
It's like a busser in a restaurant. You know, you start so you can see where to go. One thing that I think is super exciting, and that's something I just presented yesterday to a bunch of teachers, is we're trying to get it into every high school. So in Montana. So even if they end up not doing it, they have the skills to do it. And we are launching next week, 135 students in Billings. We have interest in Sealy Lake, Missoula, Libby. It's really exciting.
Okay. So you are training people to be filmmakers.
That's right.
Good to know.
Especially Montanans.
Listen, as a skeptic, I don't own a studio. I don't own a camera rental business. How do I stand to benefit from the film industry in Montana?
It's I always find that question so interesting because we never ask that of like coffee shops. You know, like, it's a product, it's media manufacturing. So you're creating a product that you may just enjoy watching, but there are ripple effect benefits, you know, with the economy and jobs. And maybe you have a child. I have a child who's 14, very much interested in the trades. He's looking at doing this kind of work. So there's other benefits than just a direct benefit to every individual.
Yeah. And there's a reason that we have several other industries lining up to help us with this legislation.
Yes, we have construction and restaurant and retail and tourism, and all of those industries see the impact in a major way.
Yeah, I think there's this adage of rising tide.
Yeah.
What is it? Lifts all ships?
Lifts all ships, yeah.
And that's kind of what film does in the state of Montana in terms of bringing in just straight dollars and tourism and lifting all the businesses around it. So this is kind of strictly an argument about money.
Yeah. And I'll say something because I think it's really important to talk about the housing issue. I mean, that's another question. I don't know if that's on your sheet, but a lot of people talk about like, well, Yellowstone and the housing issue. I don't necessarily disagree in the fact that the more Montanans we train, the less we need to bring in crew in any way. We're only 5 years old, and the amount of impact and training we've done is impressive. We're right at this crossroads right now where we could really have Montanans work. So we don't have the housing issue of bringing in people. The other thing though is remote workers to me is more of an issue. And this is a good paying job. You know, Montanans don't just have a housing issue, we have a wage issue. And these jobs are 50 to 120K, which really is in alignment with the whole governor's plan to get higher wages. So whenever people say anything, I say, I think filmmaking is actually the solution.
It's true. All right. I wasn't going to ask about housing, but I'm glad you brought it up.
That's like one of the biggest things. The last thing I'll say about that, though, is I looked at the census report. We had 48,000 people move into the state of Montana. 38,000 moved out. We only had a 10K increase. So, and I have a great story. I was at Tyler Childers, and this woman next to me said, oh, we live in Corvallis, and Yellowstone. And I said, oh yeah, what do you do? She said, oh, I'm from Miami. I'm a remote worker and I make $285,000.
Oh my God.
And I said to her, you know, I do think that that's kind of the issue.
You're the problem.
Kind of. I mean, and she, you know, she's not getting taxed. There's a whole, in my opinion, that's what's happened in our state more than anything, but it's not exclusive to Montana. Wyoming, Idaho, who have nothing to do with these films, also have had that. So there's just a growth in a lot of Western areas.
Did she also own 3 Airbnbs?
Maybe.
All right, back in character. Montana was better off before all these movies showed up. If we let the tax incentive expire, then all the California people will stop coming here, right?
Yeah. So one of the problems I have with this is if we do nothing in this legislative session, this actually just turns into a Paramount bill. Because it's first come, first serve, they will take everything till 2029. And so all of us who have other projects, more Montana based, are out of luck. And so the irony here is we actually have to do something. Otherwise, it just becomes that kind of bill. It just becomes for them. And if we put these sideboards on and we reserve it for Montanans, I think we're going to see more Montana projects that we're more proud of, in my opinion.
Yeah. And talking to Jerry the other day, because we do this Instagram live series for the coalition, but I was asking her about her experience shooting in rural areas on reservation, and that's the kind of thing that the smaller productions are more nimble and able to do than 100%. The larger productions. And she said some of the best experiences she's had have been going into these smaller communities and just meeting people who normally have they don't ever get to touch the film industry, but they get to see it up close, and it's just a really sort of unique and cool experience, and it benefits the small towns, obviously.
Yeah, and just to add on that, we just did a class in Pryor and Hardin with 10 Indigenous students who were amazing, and one of the things that's really powerful that way is to be able to tell your own stories. They can do eventually videos on stores that they have and help with their tourism in that area. And then our first PA course that was ever in a high school was in Broadus, Montana, very rural. And so we're really finding that rural Montana, Indigenous Montana, and veterans are incredible at this work, which are things that we talk a lot about, but don't always do real action items.
Right.
And film to me is like such an inclusive industry that is bringing this all together.
Yeah, I think it's easy to think about it just being a camera and an actor.
Right.
But every set is just, depending on the size of it, but it can be 50 different people who all have jobs that you don't get to see in the final product, but they're very important. They're integral to the process.
It's super blue collar, hard work. I mean, it's engineering, electricians, and construction. It's really impressive.
Everybody working on the team.
Yes.
All right, fine, Lynn-Wood. Maybe you're right. But how hard could it be to get a bill passed anyway?
Oh, my God. I have to dye my hair. Just kidding. Well, this will be my fourth session. Every year I say this is my last session, but we haven't gotten to the place where it's sustainable for Montana filmmakers. So this year I'm more proud than I've ever been. We're the most organized and the most open. For many sessions, it felt like it was led by maybe outside studios, developers. And after 2023, I was like, there's hardly any Montana filmmakers even at this table. So we created the Filmmakers Coalition, but then the Media Coalition was in need of a new president, and they voted me in, a dubious honor, as I like to say. And I was like, we need to join this. So this has been beyond exciting. The Montana Media Coalition is officially an association, which we've also never been, But I also say, look how great we're doing. Do you think the automobile industry after 5 years had a full-on association, had all these jobs, was super organized? We're doing a great job. And so we are open. And we are working really hard. We already have the bill. We have a sponsor who's reviewing it, who's very respected. The key thing about this, it is bipartisan. This does not have, it has supports on both sides because it's seen as a workforce bill.
Okay. And that's different than the last go around?
It's always been bipartisan, always.
Okay. What went wrong the last time the Media Act was up for a vote, and how do we fix it for this next cycle? So
I will say in 2023 I had stepped away. I do have young kids, and I was like, I've been doing this, I'm going to take a break. And then I got pulled back in, and by the time I got pulled back in, I'm not saying it's just me, it was a lot of different things, but it did feel like some of the stuff was behind in terms of what needed to happen. Like the bill was being presented too late. There was also like 3 or 4 bills, which was very confusing to legislators. Like, who is this? Why would we do this one over this one? And basically they all failed, with the last one that we had all the hopes on as a tie, 50-50 vote. And when you tie, you lose. And so that was pretty heartbreaking, but I saw it as a reset because that one did not have the sideboards. So it would have just continued to be like more money, in my opinion, for Paramount. I could not be more proud of the bill we're bringing forward. And that bill looks like adding documentary, raising the cap, and putting these sideboards on. And I think, and extending the sunset, because it also ends in 2029, which doesn't allow us to like create any infrastructure. But it's also one bill We're all united across the state, brought by Montana filmmakers. I think that's so imperative for people to know.
Yeah.
So we will do the work and try to get it through as quick as possible.
But it's not as simple as just tweaking the verbiage. It's a huge lift in terms of everything that it takes to, you have to lobby, you have to get the word out, bring people into your movement, basically. So we need a lot of help, a lot of support.
Yes.
How can people support us other than by joining the coalition immediately, whether you're in the film industry or just a supporter?
Yeah, well, we're going to do a few things. We've been doing these, what we're calling like the Media Act roadshows, which have been so wonderful, not just for us to meet up and see each other in person, but for the community to be there, because we don't know who's in support of us until we open it up. And I have been blown away at the amount of Montana support, who love the arts, who love local Montana filmmakers, who maybe were extras and thought it was really cool. So we've been doing that. We've had 3 already. We have 2 more coming up. Missoula on November 8th, which we still have tickets for. Yellowstone Film Ranch sold right away, so definitely get your tickets. That one's going to be really powerful. We have a Sacred Blanket drum group who's going to do an honor song. We have some of our PA tribal graduates that we're going to honor. And
it's at the West Side Theater.
West Side Theater in Missoula.
Friday, November 8th.
And MontanaMediaCoalition.org. We're going to start listing those Eventbrite events on there so people can register. We haven't locked in Whitefish, but we're locking it in next week. That looks like it's going to be at Urban Omni. It's going to be very fancy, a very nice catered dinner by a James Beard award-winning chef.
Oh, very nice.
And we're putting talent together right now, and it's been a blast. Haven't they been a blast? The events are so fun.
They're great. I am partial. I love meeting other people in our industry who I haven't met before, and then also people who are just behind us, hangers on. But that's going to be in December.
December 6th. We're locking that in. But then
Whitefish.
On top of that, we're going to really open it up and do an online one because, again, not everybody can make it in person, and we want to make sure we hit everybody. We are looking right now, we may do an online fundraiser, but we also have some incredible auction items that I think we're going to open up to the public and make sure they have that opportunity to support us.
Okay. So watch the website for that stuff. I don't have any more questions. Did I miss anything, or do you think we kind of hit?
I think we hit it.
Hit it all. All right, great. Got to get Lynn-Wood back to Missoula at some point. So before I let you go, though, this is the dumb Marmot game. It's obligatory. This one's called Wild Pitch.
Okay.
All right. And it is based solely on the fact that, to me, your name sounds like a pro baseball stadium.
Okay.
Lynn-Wood Fields.
I'll take it.
So I'm going to call a baseball game like a play-by-play announcer would, and you tell me what the equivalent achievement would be when it comes to your goals for the coalition.
Okay.
All right. Hard enough to follow? Great. Batter up. A beautiful night for playing baseball here at historic Lynn-Wood Fields. Roberto Guerrero steps up to the plate. He checks his swing, gets just enough of the... Oh, the ball squirts through to the infield and somehow rolls all the way to the wall. Guerrero manages to squeak out a double. What would a double be?
A double would be an extension of the Media Act. So on the date, that would be a double.
Just keep it going.
Just make sure we're not done.
Okay.
Okay.
Just stay alive.
Yeah, just
live to fight another day.
Just hobble along.
That's our Roberto Guerrero situation. All right, back at Lynn-Wood Fields for Game 2, and the atmosphere is slightly less electric this go-around. Mookie Utley jumps on the first pitch and drives it deep into the right field corner. It rattles around as Utley legs it out, and he will earn himself a stand-up triple. What's a stand-up triple?
The sideboards.
Okay.
The sideboards allow us to have at least a little money into 2025 and 2026 productions because of those sideboards. Otherwise, again, we are totally out and they're going to leave.
Okay, so a stand-up triple is if we pass the legislation that has the sideboards built in.
Yes.
Great. Last one. You get it. We're at Lynn-Wood Fields. The thin premise is played out. Hideo Shoto bats with the bases loaded. The slider hangs, and he gets all of that one. It's deep, way back over the center field grandstands. That one's going to end up in Flathead Lake, and we have a Grand Slam game winner on our hands, folks. The best possible outcome. What would that be?
Extended sunset, documentary added, sideboards, and a raise in the cap so that we can have a clean slate and Montanans can make all the films they want moving forward.
Raise to what number will make you happy?
I mean, my dream number would be 50 to 60 million because we cleaned the slate. I think 30 million would make sure that we can keep going.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
And still a paltry amount compared to what other states are doing, but it would be enough to make the pot sweeter, I guess, and bring filmmakers here, or keep the ones in state.
Exactly.
Here
What they
making
say,
films.
producers have 4 things they look for. Beautiful landscape, Montana, check. Crew, we finally have that, check. Infrastructure, need to work on that. A film incentive. So if we get all 4 of those, we can keep working.
There's your grand slam.
That's a grand slam. Boom.
Thank you for playing
Thank
wild
you.
pitch with me. And thank you for being here and walking me through all the important work that the coalition's doing. And hopefully we'll net some supporters from this and see some fresh faces at the upcoming events that we have as the road show for the coalition continues.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Joe doesn't talk enough about himself, but he is working like a dog on this. So thank you for all of your connections and work too.
I believe in it, and I think it'll be important for all of us moving forward when we get back to just doing creative stuff again.
Which we all want to in May.
That'd be nice.
It really would. Thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.